Hi everyone, and welcome to the 16th episode of your online free tarot course series brought to you by 1millionnights.com. Today we are going to take a look at the symbolism and possible interpretations of the tarot card bearing the number 15, the Devil. Now this is one of those tarot cards which is highly controversial. Well, first of all, I think the name says it all, but it doesn't really refer to the devil as an entity or the Christian devil or a more religious way of looking at the devil, but it rather refers what Carl Jung called our shadows. So it is basically the inner devil, or in other words, that part of our being which is primal in nature, so it is a powerful primordial energy. But this time, unlike in other expressions in other tarot cards, for example, the Strength or one of the horses of the Chariot, it isn't just an instinctual energy, but it has a lot of intelligence to it, so it does what it does very intelligently. So that is how it becomes a devil, because it can trick us, it is full of illusions, it knows how to get its way. But despite of its intelligence, it is still driven by primal forces, for example, a powerful desire, or an obsession, for example, or feelings which became rather impure, for example, like envy, jealousy, and naturally one of the most powerful symbols of the devil is greed. So it does always depict an inner power, an inner force of temptation, of the not so favorable expression of intelligence, because, high intelligence does solve problems very quickly and efficiently, but it can also be used to manipulate, to trick, to create illusions, to override the natural thought patterns in another person's mind or consciousness. So yes, that is a manipulative energy. So even though it does depict an inner power, it can be that inner power working in another person. It doesn't always refer to us and our own shadows. Sometimes it can actually point to the shadow or the bad intent or the illusion or whatever of another person who might be influencing us. It can also depict a similar influence which is not directly, caused by a person, for example, the internet, a web page, a community page, media. It can also depict misaligned belief, a religious fanaticism, for example, that is also closely linked to the symbolism of the devil, because one might be totally aligned with their purity and virtues in their own heads, but the expression of that is very violent, it is very non-spiritual-like, because you are attached, you're clinging to a dogma, to a principle, whatever makes your faith fanatic. So that is also very linked to the devil card, and naturally one of our areas of life which is most susceptible to the energy of illusions or tricks, delusions, even manipulation, attachment, strong feelings which get a little bit twisted over the course of time. Well, that is definitely love and our love lives, our partnerships. An area where the devil can be more alive than anywhere else, because everyone's perceptions are somewhat subjective, and a couple is formed from two elements, so there can be a lot of subjectivity in there. So basically that means that we see the other person as we want to see them, and many times how we want to see them does not correlate with the truth whatsoever. It can be wishful thinking, it can be our own projections, it can be our hormones playing up. But of course, it doesn't always have to be anything negative whatsoever, because a couple, a partnership, or any kind of relationship where there are two partners, well, it always has strings attached, compromises, it always has elements where both of the people have to respect a certain agreement, even if that is simply a moral agreement. For example, not to backstab that person, regardless if it's romantic partnership or business or anything else. Now, in very many tarot decks, the devil is a different version of the Lover's card. The Lovers also bears the numerology of 6, and the devil is 6 as well, 15, that's 5 plus 1 equals 6. And 6 is very important for a couple of reasons. Well, one of it is the spiritual force behind attachments, temptation, everything that the devil symbolizes. 6 is basically spirit manifested in matter, and if the Lovers is the higher octave of this, love, creational energy, a totally different way of evolving when two elements meet and become one unified element. That is basically the Lover's card. The devil, on the other hand, is the force of temptation, the force of chaos, and basically the misuse of intelligence, which also provides the same kind of evolution, but by having to overcome the temptations, the challenges, the obstacles, the chaos our illusions may create in our lives. So basically it is a totally different kind of expression of the spirit manifested in matter. And at the same time, if it has to do with love, so the Lover's card is usually an other version of us, an other us, manifested, incarnated, embodied, and the reason why that other person can be philosophically seen, of course, as just another projection, another version of us, well, it's because of the strong emotional connection, the attraction, and the purity of it. When we love someone very, very dearly, well, that love is almost like self-love, so we kind of treat that person as if they would be just another part of us, or a part of us which is independent from our own beings, of course. Now, the devil is the opposite of this, because yes, there is connection, there is attraction, but we look at the other person as the other, not necessarily as a part of us anymore, and that is exactly why there have to be rules, there have to be compromises, there have to be mutually agreed and accepted agreements, because it is the other, so we have to be in harmony with the other, and the mind, it needs guarantees, so that is why the agreement has to be there. So basically it can be just seen as the Lovers in a totally different way of looking at it, where we look at the strong material elements of the bond, because when there is a couple, they're also together materially, so they have to share things, they need certain kind of protections and guarantees, which is, for example, marriage and the legal and social protection benefits that an act of marriage done legally can provide to the couple. And of course, it is also the symbol that they agreed to manifest and keep on manifesting their love, their union, their partnership in matter through that contract. So when they meet each other for the first time and they fall in love and they start living their love story, it takes the expression of the Lovers, because, something which was fated manifested in their lives. But over the course of time, as they get to know each other very, very closely, and they get to know each other's shadows and flaws and weaknesses, of course, well, it becomes the devil card, because there have to be certain compromises, mutual acceptance, and of course strings attached, especially when they become a family, especially when they have children. You know, the family as an entity has to be protected, not just, spiritually and emotionally, but physically, materially, and legally as well. But that is no longer the Lover's card. It already took the expression of the devil, so it's not negative whatsoever. You might say that the mistrust, the just in case scenarios of why they signed that agreement, might be a negative emotion. It might be maybe the whisper of their shadows, which plants the seed of doubt. But in this day and age, that doubt is diligence. So it's nothing really negative. And also, this is where it leads us to the astrological symbolism of the devil, which is Capricorn. It is all about power. It is all about control. It is all about strings attached, agreements, and all of that, traditions, rules. But those, if taken in a very constructive way, well, they provide security, they provide balance, they provide permanence, grounding. They make the earth element fertile, be able to take in seeds of manifestation. That is basically also the devil. Now, if the Gemini tarot card was Gemini, the symbolism of Gemini, where two elements meet and something totally new is formed, and that connection and process of getting to know each other, regardless of what type of union that is, even if it's not between two people, it can be, for example, learning something new, where you're one element and what you're trying to learn and master is the other element, and the two are quantically united because you're trying to immerse yourself into it. So it doesn't even have to be a person. But as I said, that is just your mind meeting whatever it is for the first time. So it is a union, but it's the adolescent stages of that union. The devil, on the other hand, is already the matured version, where you have explored everything, all the big and important things that you need to know, so you make it material, you ground it, you kind of manifest it. For example, if it's something you were learning, then now you can practice it, or become a teacher yourself, because you already master it. So that is basically the symbolism of Capricorn already. But of course, it is very, very difficult to tell without a practical application of each and every specific subject of a reading, what and which connotations the devil card is going to take. Because, as I said, it doesn't necessarily have to be anything negative. It doesn't necessarily have to symbolize anything evil, impure, not even our own shadows. Sometimes it can actually symbolize the need to control stuff, the need to ground and balance stuff, to take responsibility and ownership of our actions. And it also has a very strong element of mind over matter to it, because the devil is the practical applications of our intelligence, where there is a will and that will is combined with thought. Well, that definitely means that there's a way, regardless if sometimes that way has to justify the means. For example, if seen as just like a psychological energy, well, then the devil clearly represents our shadows, but also our instinctual self, which possesses all of our primal urges, if we can call it that way, and those urges can over time mask themselves and become a dominant psychological force, leaving us feeling a little bit helpless, a little bit overpowered by those very, very strong feelings that the devil can represent. for example, greed or a very powerful desire, or it can be like an obsession that we develop, especially when we really, really want something and keep on not having it, keep on not succeeding. Well then, for some people that can turn into a sense of failure and they abandon it, but for others it can grow and turn into an obsession. Strong attractions based on envy, jealousy, or sheer greed can also be a very strong psychological power, which can just steer us from the background and we might not even know this. So yes, many times the devil is a strong unconscious energy, but it is not the kind of deeply hidden and submersed unconscious pattern, for example, like a powerful trauma, etc. But the devil is just beneath the surface, so it is hidden, but it can easily be detected because it has such a very strong influence on us. All we need to do in order to identify our very own devilish patterns, if we can call it that way, is to observe ourselves in a very detached way, as objectively as we can, and then we can already identify the thought patterns which are heavily charged with, either the jealousy or the greed or the obsession or having our ways or our inner manipulative tendencies, the shadows, which tricks us many times. And of course the devil is also one of the more darkest negative expressions of the inner child, because the inner child is not just innocence and purity. The inner child is also very strong manipulative energy, exactly because of this innocence. Its innocence will never allow the shadow to look at its harmful tendencies, to know that it's just an obsession, that is just a very strong but intoxicating desire. It will always have a tendency to look at itself in the most innocent of ways. It wants it, and that's all that matters. So very many times it is the rather negative expression of the inner child. In astrology we can call it the Lilith. And of course, when our consciousness is open and aware enough to see the devil, the inner devil of course, for what it is, the pattern, the feeling, the very strong desire, well then it is very, very intelligent, and it will definitely try to trick us into forgetting it, symbolically speaking of course, or ignoring it, or doubting its existence, doubting its purposes. The inner child, especially when it wants something obsessively, when it is very, very attracted to something, it's not easy to convince not to want it. And that is why a lot of self-knowledge, understanding the self is necessary, because you can't really beat it into submission, because you'll just turn it into your enemy. Neither can you trick it, because it is as intelligent as you are. So the only way you can actually work with this is through self-understanding, self-exploration, and, to be your own parent, to be the parent of that inner child, and through love and patience just guide it through the obsession or whatever the devil symbolizes. Many times it is basically obvious that it also represents a very strong sexual energy. So it can also represent a powerful attraction which you may or may not be aware of. Especially when it comes to love, matters of love and partnership. If the devil is the predominant energy in that reading, well, it can represent that the attraction, the physical attraction, is much more powerful than someone realizes. Or the relationship is basically based on the fulfillment and satisfaction of a very strong need or desire. That can be sexual, material, or anything else. It can be, for example, a weakness which results from a trauma which one of the partners has, and the other person just compensates for that, and that's why this relationship exists. Some might call it love, some might call it alliance, but if that need or desire would cease overnight, when this relationship would have no substance anymore. So that's why the devil is a very powerful material card. It always speaks about how our things are in the material world. And even when it symbolizes intelligence, well, it is the earthly kind of intelligence, the one which solves problems, the one which thinks of very quick, down-to-earth solutions. Some of which might not be moral or ethical at all, but it doesn't really matter because we're talking about the earthly plane. Now, when it is a karmic energy, or it is the question of the reading is about karma and karmic influences, the devil can represent temptation, a karmic challenge, a karmic test, or of course sometimes that every action, especially past action, has a reaction, and one might not know when that reaction is going to re-enter their lives, at which stage. It can be instant, but sometimes it can be a lot of years. So very many times when we don't know why bad things are happening to us and the devil card pops out, especially in a position which inclines to show the past, well then maybe we did something even without knowing, which led to a karmic discharge. It doesn't always have to be something bad. It can many times be something good that we did. Because you know the saying, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. So sometimes excessive help, sometimes excessively babysitting someone emotionally or in any other way does actually lead to bad karma, because if you overdo it, well then you just make the other person lazy. They will not actually tap into their wisdom and try to solve their own problems. They won't try to harvest the big lessons that come from obstacles and challenges and bad things that might be happening to them. Or many times it can represent that you basically sacrificed way too much, and not only did you make that the situation of that other person that much easier, ridiculously easier, but you disadvantaged yourself. So very many times it can represent an act of self-sabotage, especially an act which was committed, so to speak, in the past, but it was forgotten or it wasn't seen as something rather harmful. And you know, since it was in the past, a lot of deeds and a lot of other things have been built on it, so the foundations of something are corrupted. And another phase that has to begin after the devil is the tower moment, the upheaval, when that one small corrupted brick in the structure has to be exposed and fixed. Now, in very practical situations, the devil card can also represent its more positive side. There sometimes in life we do have to embody our survival instincts. We do have to outsmart sometimes the whole world. We do have to overcome challenges by using a couple of aces under our sleeves. So, you know, sometimes we do have to cheat our ways out of tricky situations, or situations where, you know, like the normal resolution would take a lot of time, a lot of effort, a lot of sacrifices. So, you know, sometimes the universe actually encourages cheating, especially when that advantage is born out of the hard work of someone. For example, to master a skill, to perfect their own knowledge of something, or to build up very strong relations, maybe in higher places. Well, that takes a lot of sacrifice. And if no one gets hurt in the process, and if there's no disadvantage to anyone, then, you know, this act of cheating, so to speak, might simply be like a karmic harvest which you are going to claim there and then, a harvest that have been pending because you worked for it, you sacrificed for it, but decided to claim it when you will need this kind of help or solution or tricks the most in your life. And that can be seen as just management of your inner resources and management, being in control of your life. And you just decided that that was the moment when you're gonna pull the strings, and it's absolutely fine. But of course, if you're going to walk over other people and cause a disadvantage or imbalance in someone else's life, then naturally, then you are the rather negative expression of the devil, because cheating, tricks, and pulling out aces when it causes the disadvantage of another person, now that definitely leads to bad karma. Naturally, very many times the devil does represent a negative, toxic person who is lying, who is deceiving you, or who has done something without your knowledge. And whatever that was, of course, is kept secret or simply not expressed to make sure that you don't become aware of it. In other words, when other people are cheating, manipulating, being unfair, using their advantages, their intelligence, or their relations in disadvantageous way to you, then the devil can definitely represent that person, or the tricks, or the hidden manipulation that is about to enter your life. Now let's see what the devil can symbolize combined with other cards. For example, the devil and the judgment card, devil and the world card can represent exactly what I have spoken about earlier. A karmic event or karmic discharge because of something you might have done in the past. Devil and magician, devil and chariot, devil and high priest might symbolize a manifestation of your spiritual work, a manifestation of your faith, whatever you believe in, a manifestation of your attractions. Devil and the Empress card is rather about, sexual attraction. The devil and the wheel card, for example, the Wheel of Fortune, it can represent a very big opportunity, but which has conditions and strings attached. So you will need to really think it through until you can actually use it in your life. The devil and hangman, for example, it can mean a self-victimization tendency, where you're more victim in your mind and in your perceptions than you are in real life or karmically. The devil and the moon, or devil and moon reversed, devil and high priestess reversed, might be a warning sign to be very careful, because you're about to manifest something that you fear, or something that really unsettles you emotionally, or it is in your unconscious mind. The devil and the tower card may be also a warning sign to be very careful what you do, who you help, who you, make agreements with, make promises to, because you might be stirring up disaster. Devil and the Emperor card might warn you, be careful who you trust, because they might want to manipulate you, rule you, dominate you, without you even knowing this. The Devil and Temperance card, for example, be very careful, because you are going into excess. Or the Devil and the Fool card, for example, it might be a warning sign that your inner child or your urges are controlling you way more than it is healthy. Now the Devil card with certain Wands cards may represent a conflict. It might represent a battle of wills, a battle of egos, the battle between the shadows of two people, which can be quite dangerous, because that will mean a lot of, under the belt hits a lot of backstabbing, a lot of outsmarting, and when this energy becomes very, very strong and predominant, well, then it will just ruin everyone's life at the end. Especially when the devil is combined, for example, with the Five of Wands, it may mean a conflict with someone. Four of Wands, maybe a conflict with a family member or someone very, very dear to you. Six of Wands, you might be defending yourself in a very excessive manner and you're not allowing anything in. Or you might be in a state of struggle for so long that it's already on autopilot and you don't know how to switch it off. The devil and the Ace of Wands, for example, it might represent a very powerful temptation, or it can be like an invitation to infidelity or something which involves getting something which is way too good to be true. The devil and the Ten of Wands, it may depict a situation when your worries and your problems are being focused on so very much, or you are almost obsessed with solving them or getting those out of your life, that they become like a very, very heavy cross and it just starts crushing you under its weight. The devil and the swords cards, now this is where it becomes rather tricky, because very many times it does represent like a toxic person, a dishonest person, or if you're a victim of manipulation, someone compromising your situation or compromising your life even legally. Or it can represent gossip, lies, untrue or misleading communication, being a victim of a con or a phishing scam or anything like that, for example. With the Five of Swords, the Seven of Swords, it can definitely represent someone sabotaging you, someone pulling the strings from the shadows. And or very many times with the Five of Swords, it can be your own mental patterns defeating you constantly. It can mean that you're placing obstacles in your life mentally through your way of thinking, through your analysis without even knowing. Or the Four of Swords might represent a mental stagnation when your mind is just procrastinating, but you try to fight it, where, the Devil card is the predominant energy here. So you might try to fight procrastination or a certain kind of stagnation, and it will lead to a really, really powerful mental blockage, when instead you should just take that opportunity to relax your mind and allow this stagnation period to end in a more favorable way, where if you just wait it out, if you use that time to just relax your mind, not to have any very relevant, very pressing thoughts, not to worry, just simply relax and take some time out, or distract your mind with fantasy, with games, with interacting with other people. That is a much more constructive way to use the opportunity offered by stagnation. Or for example, the Devil with the Nine of Swords. Now that can be quite dangerous, because it can mean that your thought patterns, your inner forces are turning something which at this stage is just a bad thought or a worry or a fear or something that really unsettles you. They're turning it into a very strong depression. So this might be a warning to be very lucid, not to allow your shadow to make your already agitated mind become your worst enemy and just sabotage you and, bring you down into a depressive state. Now with the Cups card, it is really delicate, because it really depends on the situation. It really depends on the combinations of cards. It can be something very positive. For example, like immersing into feelings, into emotion, into romance and love and dreams and all of that. But that can also be a very dangerous illusion. For example, the Devil and the Seven of Cups might represent not only that what you desire is an illusion, but that illusion is really harmful. The Devil and, for example, Eight of Cups, it can mean escapism, where those substances or alcohol or whatever it is rather dangerous, or it's getting to dangerous levels. The Devil and Nine of Cups, well, this is where it can mean anything. It cannot mean that you don't need anyone else in your life. You're very self-sufficient. You have everything that you need inside of you. You already possess self-love, self-respect. You can just be happy with yourself. But at the same time, it can also represent all this done in a very selfish and vengeful way, where you just intentionally shut other people out because you're that proud of yourself. Or combined with the Ten of Cups, for example, well, it can mean that the emotional influence of someone who you hold dear, who is already part of your life. For example, your partner, a parent, a child, someone who you really love, might not be really honest, and it might not really lead the right way, even if it's totally positive. For example, like a parent telling their child that they're so good and talented at something, when in truth they are truly not. So it might be a suggestion not to trust the opinion, especially if that opinion has a good dose of subjectivity into it, of a loved one, not to trust it, because they might be showing you something which is not the truth, but out of sheer love and appreciation. But in reverse position, it can also be a rather delicate situation where someone is projecting their own fears and insecurities onto your situation out of sheer love to prevent you from suffering what they have. But that doesn't necessarily mean that your situation is gonna turn out the way theirs did, because you're a totally different person. Now, the Devil with coins cards, well, it usually does represent prosperity and material power, because the Devil, it is a card which represents being rich and having material influence and power. So it is usually a rather positive sign, where you might have an excess of material gains, values, or any kind of situation which leads to this entering imminently into your life, or a manifestation of something. Like the Devil with the Six of Coins, for example, it can mean an act of charity or donation or help, but a certain kind where it's not really unconditional. It is just you scratch my back, I scratch yours kind of situation, where that favor is definitely gonna be returned at one point. Or sometimes the Six of Coins reversed, it can mean just a loan, where it can be very, very helpful and it can do miracles and wonders, but there will come a time, the agreement, the contract, where that loan has to be returned. Or it can be an unconditional gift, but maybe that person is giving you the gift or the money or the value or whatever that Six of Coins might represent, the gift itself, because they're attracted to you, and the fact that they express this or keep it hidden doesn't really matter. The Devil and the Five of Coins, for example, well, it can represent that if it's an illness, or if it's poverty or material problems, severe material problems, of course, are not really due to anything else but your own thought patterns, or something in your mind, or something emotional, where you run this program of being materially vulnerable, regardless if that represents, financial situation or health. Or, for example, the Devil with the Ace of Coins, well, it can represent the chance, the opportunity of a big gain, of a significant gain, but you will have to basically embody a strong sense of survival mentality in order to draw it into your life. For example, if it's an opportunity, well, then you have to be the first who grabs it in a very selfish manner, and if you're capable of doing that, well, it's yours. That is the prize. Or, for example, the devil and the 10 of coins. Now, of course, the 10 of coins represents either a lot of money, an inheritance, or a small fortune, so it's something very relevant and very impactful. But if you accept it into your life, if you take it, if you receive it, well, then you will bind that person to yourself for a long period of time. Well, this concludes today's episode. Thank you so much for listening. Until next time, bye for now.